Imagine this. The person you thought would always love you starts pulling away. It's subtle at first, like a whisper you can barely hear. Then it becomes louder. A missed text, a colder tone, an unexplained distance. You feel it in your gut before your mind even catches up. Something has changed. Here's the truth many don't tell you. When love fades, it doesn't vanish overnight. Instead, it leaves clues, and if you're paying attention, you can spot them before the final goodbye. But here's the kicker. So many women miss these signs because of common misconceptions. Maybe he's just stressed, you tell yourself. Maybe I'm imagining things. Ladies, let me be your wake-up call. When a man starts to stop loving you, he always shows it in specific ways. Now, I get it. This might feel heavy, but stay with me. What if I told you that recognizing these signs doesn't just give you clarity, it gives you power? Power to decide how to move forward, power to protect your heart, and power to set yourself up for a relationship where love is mutual and strong. Today we're going to dive deep into this topic, not with boring theories or vague advice, but with raw, actionable truths. We're unpacking the 5 things men always do when their feelings start to fade. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt confused by his sudden coldness? Wondered why he no longer lights up when he sees you? Questioned what you could have done differently? Then this is for you. By the end of this, you'll not only understand what's happening, you'll have the tools to handle it with grace and confidence. Ready to uncover the truth? Let's dive in. 1. His tone and words change noticeably. Words have power. They're the foundation of how we connect, love, and build relationships. Think back to the early days with him. Do you remember how his words felt like sunshine? Every message, every conversation, every goodnight carried warmth, affection, and a sense of security. But now something feels different. When a man starts to stop loving you, the change in his tone and words is often the first clue. It's subtle at first, like the faintest whisper in a crowded room. You tell yourself you're imagining things, that he's just tired or stressed. But deep down, you feel the shift, don't you? His once playful jokes feel forced. The affectionate nicknames he used have disappeared. And when he says, "I love you," it feels more like a habit than a heartfelt confession. You're not crazy for noticing this. Love, or the loss of it, always shows itself in words. Think about it. When we're deeply in love, our words overflow with intention. We're curious about our partner's day. We compliment them, reassure them, and make them feel adored. But when love starts to fade, the effort behind those words begins to vanish. He becomes less interested, less engaged, and his tone carries the weight of disconnection. Let me ask you this. Have you ever felt like you're walking on eggshells in conversations with him? You're careful not to say the wrong thing because you sense his irritation bubbling just beneath the surface. That's a red flag, my friend. When a man's words turn cold or dismissive, it's often because his heart isn't in the relationship anymore. Now, here's the thing. This isn't always intentional. Sometimes men don't even realize they're pulling away. They might justify their behavior by saying they're busy or just not great with words. But let's be real, if he truly cared, he'd find the time and the words. Love isn't about perfection, it's about effort. So, how do you handle this shift in his tone and words without losing your sense of self? First, let's talk about what not to do. Don't beg for his attention. Don't start overanalyzing every text or conversation, wondering what you did wrong. And for the love of all things sacred, don't lower your standards just to keep him comfortable. Instead, take a step back and observe. Ask yourself, is this a temporary phase or is this a pattern? If it's a phase, give him space to sort through whatever he's dealing with. But if it's a pattern, it's time to address it. One of the principles of Stoicism is focusing on what you can control and letting go of what you can't. In Stoic dating, this means recognizing that while you can't control how he speaks to you, you can control how you respond. If his words no longer make you feel valued, you have every right to voice your feelings. Here's an approach that works. Instead of accusing him with statements like, "You never compliment me anymore," try expressing your feelings with I statements. For example, say, "I've noticed we don't talk as much as we used to. and I miss the connection we had. Is there something on your mind? This opens the door to an honest conversation without putting him on the defensive. But what if he brushes you off or gets defensive? That's when you need to step into your power. Remember, his tone and words are reflections of his feelings, not your worth. If he's unwilling to meet you halfway, it's a sign that his love isn't as strong as it should be. And while that's painful to acknowledge, it's also liberating. You deserve a love that feels like a partnership, not a guessing game. A man who loves you will want to make you feel secure, not confused. So if his words consistently leave you questioning his feelings, it's time to reevaluate the relationship. Let me paint you a picture. You're texting him about something important, maybe a concern, a dream, or even just a funny story from your day. And instead of responding with curiosity or excitement, he gives you a one-word reply. Okay, or worse, he doesn't respond at all. How does that make you feel? This lack of engagement isn't just a small oversight. It's a symptom of a deeper issue. A man who truly loves you will want to know the details of your day, your thoughts, and your emotions. His words will reflect his desire to connect with you, even during busy times. On the flip side, when a man stops loving you, his words become transactional. He talks to you out of obligation, not affection. Conversations that used to flow effortlessly now feel forced, like he's checking a box rather than genuinely connecting. This is where Stoicism can be a guiding light. Stoicism teaches us to remain grounded and composed, even in the face of emotional challenges. Instead of reacting with desperation or anger, use this opportunity to assess the situation with clarity. Is this a relationship where your voice and feelings are valued? Or are you holding on to something that's no longer serving you? Let's be honest, it's painful to realize someone you love might be pulling away. But here's the silver lining: every ending is also a new beginning. By recognizing the change in his tone and words, you're giving yourself the gift of clarity. And clarity is the first step toward reclaiming your power. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever noticed a change in how a man spoke to you? Did it feel like a subtle shift or a sudden coldness? How did you handle it? Share your experience in the comments below. I'd love to know your thoughts. And if you're finding value in this conversation, like this video and comment number 1 to let me know you're with me. Also, don't forget to subscribe for more insights on love, relationships, and Stoic dating strategies. Together, we'll navigate the ups and downs of love with confidence and grace. The next part is going to dive even deeper into the subtle shifts that happen when love begins to fade. If you've ever felt a man pulling away emotionally, you won't want to miss it. Hit that subscribe button now so you don't miss the next chapter of this conversation. 2. He withdraws emotionally. Emotional withdrawal, it's the silent killer of relationships. Have you ever felt like he's physically present but emotionally distant? Like the man you once shared your deepest fears and wildest dreams with has suddenly built an invisible wall around himself. If this resonates, you're not imagining things. When a man starts to fall out of love, emotional withdrawal is one of the clearest signs. And yet, it's also one of the most painful to confront. Let's go back to the early days of your relationship. Remember those nights when you stayed up talking for hours? You'd share stories, laugh until your stomach hurt, and feel like you truly understood each other on a soul-deep level. Now compare that to the present. The conversations are shorter. He no longer seems interested in hearing about your day. When you try to open up, he either changes the subject or gives you one-word replies. You feel like you're talking to a stranger. Why does this happen? Emotional withdrawal often occurs when a man feels disconnected or unsure about his feelings. Instead of addressing the issue head-on, he pulls back. It's not necessarily out of malice. Sometimes he doesn't even realize he's doing it. But for you, his emotional absence feels like rejection. It's as though the connection you once treasured is slipping through your fingers, and no matter how hard you try to hold on, it keeps slipping away. Here's where things get tricky. When he starts to withdraw emotionally, your first instinct might be to chase him. You might try harder to get his attention, planning special dates, sending sweet messages, or even pretending everything is fine. But here's the harsh truth. Chasing someone who's pulling away often backfires. It reinforces the distance rather than bridging it. So, what should you do instead? First, let's talk about why this emotional withdrawal hurts so much. As humans, we crave connection. It's in our DNA to seek love, understanding, and companionship. When the person we care about withdraws, it triggers a deep sense of insecurity. We start questioning ourselves. Am I not enough? Did I do something wrong? But let me tell you something important. His emotional withdrawal is not a reflection of your worth. In Stoicism, one of the core principles is separating what you can control from what you can't. In Stoic dating, this means understanding that his emotions and actions are his responsibility, not yours. You didn't make him pull away, and it's not your job to fix it for him. Instead of chasing him, focus on yourself. Take a step back and give him the space to figure out what's going on in his mind. Sometimes men withdraw because they're dealing with their own insecurities or fears. They might be overwhelmed by work, family, or personal struggles. By stepping back, you're not abandoning the relationship, you're giving it room to breathe. But let's get real. Space doesn't always solve the problem. If he's emotionally checked out for an extended period, it's time to address the issue directly. Approach the conversation with calmness and clarity. Use phrases like, "I've noticed that we're not as connected as we used to be, and it's been weighing on my mind. Is there something you'd like to talk about?" This opens the door for him to share his feelings without feeling attacked. Now, I know what you're thinking. What if he doesn't open up? What if he shuts me out completely? That's a possibility, and it's one you need to prepare for. Some men simply aren't ready to face their emotions. They'd rather withdraw than confront the truth, even if it means losing someone who loves them. This is where your self-worth comes into play. If he's unwilling to meet you halfway, ask yourself, is this the kind of relationship I want? Love should be a partnership, not a one-sided effort. You deserve someone who values emotional intimacy and is willing to work through challenges together. Let's take a moment to explore what emotional withdrawal might look like in subtle ways. Have you noticed him spending more time on his phone instead of talking to you? Does he avoid eye contact during conversations? Or perhaps he started making plans without including you, like going out with friends or diving into hobbies that don't involve you. These are all signs of emotional distance, and they can be incredibly hurtful if left unaddressed. But here's the thing, not all emotional withdrawal is permanent. In some cases, it's a temporary phase. He might just need time to process his feelings or work through personal challenges. The key is to distinguish between a man who's temporarily pulling away and one who's emotionally unavailable for the long haul. The former can be addressed with patience and understanding. The latter requires tough decisions about what you're willing to tolerate. If you're in this situation, I want to challenge you to think about your own emotional needs. Are you giving him all your energy while neglecting yourself? Are you putting his happiness above your own? This is a common trap, but it's one you can avoid. Take this opportunity to reconnect with yourself, your passions, your goals, your self-worth. When you prioritize your own well-being, you'll be better equipped to handle the challenges in your relationship. Let's tie this back to Stoicism for a moment. One of the most empowering lessons from Stoicism is learning to find peace within yourself, regardless of external circumstances. When you cultivate inner strength and resilience, you become less dependent on others for validation. This doesn't mean shutting people out, it means loving them from a place of wholeness rather than neediness. So, let me ask you, have you ever felt emotionally drained by a partner who was pulling away? How did you handle it? Did you try to chase him, or did you step back and focus on yourself? Share your story in the comments, I'd love to hear your perspective. And if this resonates with you, like this video and comment number 1 to show your support. Also, if you're finding these insights helpful, hit that subscribe button. This channel is all about empowering you to navigate love and relationships with confidence, grace, and a touch of stoicism. By subscribing, you'll join a community of women who are committed to personal growth and self-discovery. The next part of this conversation is going to dive even deeper into how men's actions change when they start to lose love. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. Subscribe now, and let's continue this journey together. 3. His actions show less effort. When love begins to fade, the change in effort is unmistakable. You might not notice it right away. After all, it's not like he stops trying overnight, but slowly, subtly, the little things he used to do to make you feel special start to disappear. And that absence, my friend, speaks volumes. I think about the beginning of your relationship. Remember how he'd go out of his way to plan thoughtful dates, surprise you with little gestures, or simply text you good morning every day. His actions weren't just random, they were his way of showing you that you mattered. But now, the thoughtful gestures have been replaced with excuses, and the once daily texts feel like an afterthought. Let's pause for a second. Have you felt this before? Maybe you're noticing it right now. It stings, doesn't it? The shift from being his priority to feeling like an option can leave you questioning everything. Why isn't he trying anymore? Is it something I did? Is he losing interest? The hard truth is this: when a man stops loving you, his effort is often the first casualty. Love in its truest form inspires action. It's not just about grand romantic gestures, it's about the consistency in how he shows up for you every day. When that consistency fades, it's a sign that his feelings might be shifting. But here's where it gets tricky. Not all men intentionally pull back. Some genuinely don't realize how their lack of effort affects you. They might blame work, stress, or life getting in the way. And while those reasons might be valid, they shouldn't become excuses for neglecting the relationship. Let me ask you this: how often have you excused his lack of effort? How many times have you told yourself, it's okay, he's just busy, only to feel hurt when his priorities don't include you? This is where Stoicism comes in. One of the principles of Stoicism is accepting reality without letting it control your emotions. In Stoic dating, this means recognizing when his actions no longer align with his words. If he says he loves you but doesn't show it through effort, it's time to take a step back and reevaluate. Here's an example. Imagine he used to plan date nights every week, but now he barely remembers to ask how your day was. Or maybe he used to surprise you with your favorite coffee on a random Tuesday, but now he doesn't even notice when you've had a rough day. These changes might seem small, but they add up, and they hurt. What do you do when his effort starts to dwindle? First, resist the urge to overcompensate. Don't start planning every date, initiating every conversation, or bending over backward to make things easier for him. This only creates an imbalance where you're doing all the work. Instead, take a step back and observe. Does his lack of effort reflect a temporary phase, or is it a consistent pattern? If it's temporary, perhaps he's going through a tough time, then a little patience might be all he needs. But if it's a pattern, it's a red flag. Love shouldn't feel like a constant struggle for attention or validation. Let me share a story with you. A friend of mine, let's call her Sarah, was in a relationship where her boyfriend slowly stopped putting in effort. At first, she made excuses for him. He's just stressed with work, she said. But as months went by, the pattern didn't change. She realized that she was the only one trying to keep the relationship alive. Sarah decided to have an honest conversation with him. She calmly expressed how his lack of effort made her feel. And do you know what happened? He admitted that he hadn't even noticed how distant he'd become. While they ultimately decided to part ways, Sarah's decision to confront the issue gave her clarity and closure. Now, let me ask you, if you're noticing a lack of effort from your partner, have you addressed it? Or have you been silently hoping things will get better on their own? Here's a tip. When you talk to him about his lack of effort, focus on your feelings rather than his shortcomings. For example, instead of saying you never plan dates anymore, try, I miss the way we used to make time for each other. It made me feel special. This approach invites him to reflect without feeling attacked. But what if he doesn't change? What if he hears you but doesn't take action? That's when you need to consider your own boundaries. Are you willing to stay in a relationship where you're constantly questioning his commitment? Or is it time to prioritize your own happiness and growth? Effort, after all, is a choice. A man who loves you will choose to show up for you, even when life gets busy or challenging. And if he's no longer choosing to put in the effort, it's a sign that his heart might not be fully in it anymore. This is where your self-worth comes into play. You deserve a partner who matches your energy, who who values the relationship as much as you do. Don't settle for breadcrumbs when you're capable of having the whole loaf. Let me tie this back to Stoicism. One of the most empowering lessons from Stoicism is learning to focus on what you can control. You can't force someone to try harder, but you can choose how you respond. You can choose to set boundaries, prioritize your own needs, and walk away if the relationship no longer serves you. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt like you were the only one putting effort into a relationship? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective. And if this resonates with you, like this video and comment number 1 to let me know you're here. Also, don't forget to subscribe. This channel is all about empowering you to navigate love and relationships with confidence and grace. By subscribing, you'll join a community of women who are committed to personal growth, self-discovery, and living authentically. The next part of this conversation is going to dive even deeper into the subtle changes that happen when love starts to fade. If you've ever felt like your partner is creating distance, both physically and emotionally, you won't want to miss it. Hit that subscribe button now so you don't miss the next chapter of this discussion. 4. He creates more distance. Distance is a silent, creeping force in relationships. It doesn't announce itself with dramatic arguments or sudden decisions. Instead, it inches its way into your bond, one small step at a time. One day he's your partner in everything, and the next, he seems like a stranger. If you're feeling this shift, you're not imagining it. When a man starts falling out of love, creating distance is one of the most telling signs. This distance isn't always physical, though that's often a big part of it. It's emotional too. Maybe he doesn't call as often or skips out on plans you once made together. Maybe his touch feels different, less tender, more routine. Or maybe he's right there beside you, but you can feel the miles of silence between your hearts. Let's dive into this. Have you ever noticed how people in love naturally gravitate toward each other? It's not just about holding hands or sharing the same space. It's about a deeper connection. They make time for each other not because they have to, but because they want to. When that desire fades, the space between them grows. Does this sound familiar? Perhaps he started working late more often, citing deadlines or meetings that suddenly seem endless. Or maybe his weekends are increasingly filled with solo plans, hanging out with friends, diving into hobbies that exclude you, or even just staying glued to his phone or computer. You can sense he's choosing to be anywhere but with you. Here's where it gets complicated. Men often create distance as a way to avoid confronting their emotions. Instead of facing the discomfort of a fading connection, they withdraw. They might tell themselves they're just busy or need some space, but the truth is, this distance isn't random. It's a way of disengaging without having to say the hard words. I don't feel the same anymore. Let me ask you, how do you react when you notice this distance? Do you try harder to pull him closer? Do you overcompensate by making yourself more available, hoping he'll notice and bridge the gap? If so, you're not alone. It's natural to want to fight for something you care about. But here's the harsh reality. Chasing someone who's pulling away often creates more distance, not less. This is where Stoicism can be your ally. In Stoicism, one of the core lessons is learning to accept things as they are, not as you wish them to be. In Stoic dating, this translates to recognizing when someone is creating distance and resisting the urge to cling tighter. Instead of chasing, take a step back. Observe. Reflect. Ask yourself, is this distance temporary, or is it a sign of something deeper? Now, I'm not saying you should ignore the issue. Communication is key in any relationship. If you notice him creating distance, it's important to address it, but in a way that invites understanding, not blame. For example, you might say, I've noticed we've been spending less time together lately and it's made me feel a little disconnected. Is there something on your mind? This approach opens the door for a conversation without putting him on the defensive. But what if he doesn't respond? What if he brushes it off or denies there's an issue? That's when you need to listen to what his actions are telling you. Words can lie, but actions rarely do. If his behavior consistently shows a lack of interest in closing the distance, it might be time to reevaluate the relationship. Here's a scenario to consider. You've planned a special evening together, a dinner, a movie, maybe even just a quiet night in. But at the last minute, he cancels. His excuse might seem reasonable, but deep down, you know it's not the first time. And as you sit there with your plans falling apart, you can't help but wonder, if I were still a priority, would this keep happening? The answer, unfortunately, is likely no. A man who values the relationship will make an effort to maintain closeness, even during busy or challenging times. He won't let life's distractions become excuses for neglecting the bond you share. But let's get back to you. When you notice this growing distance, what can you do? Start by shifting the focus back to yourself. Instead of pouring all your energy into fixing the relationship, use this time to reconnect with your own passions and goals. When you prioritize your well-being, you not only strengthen your sense of self, you also remind him of the confident, vibrant person he fell for in the first place. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Emily, noticed her boyfriend creating distance. At first, she tried everything to close the gap, planning dates, sending sweet texts, even pretending not to notice his lack of effort. But nothing changed. One day, Emily decided to stop chasing. She focused on her career, reconnected with friends, and started exploring hobbies she'd always wanted to try. And do you know what happened? Her boyfriend began to notice. He saw the spark in her that had dimmed during their rough patch, and he realized what he was at risk of losing. While their story didn't end in reconciliation, Emily walked away stronger, knowing her worth. Here's the takeaway. You can't force someone to close the distance they're creating, but you can choose to prioritize your own happiness, and in doing so, you set the tone for how you deserve to be treated. Let me ask you again, have you ever felt the sting of emotional or physical distance in a relationship? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective. And if this part resonates with you, like this video and comment number 1 to let me know you're here. Before we wrap up, I want to remind you of something important. Distance doesn't always mean the end. Sometimes it's a wake-up call, a chance for both of you to reflect, reconnect, and rebuild. But if the distance persists despite your efforts, it's a sign that you deserve better. You deserve a partner who chooses closeness, not avoidance. If you're finding these insights valuable, don't forget to subscribe. This channel is your go-to space for navigating the highs and lows of relationships with wisdom, confidence, and a touch of stoicism. By subscribing, you're joining the community of women who are committed to growth, authenticity, and empowered love. The next part of this conversation will explore another undeniable sign that his love might be fading. If you've ever felt like he's picking fights over the smallest things, you won't want to miss it. Hit that subscribe button now so you're the first to know when the next chapter drops. 5. He becomes easily irritated by small things. Love, when it's strong and secure, brings patience and understanding. But when love starts to fade, the smallest things can ignite irritation. His once playful tolerance for your quirks suddenly vanishes. That laugh he used to adore? It now seems to grate on his nerves. The little habits he found charming have become sources of annoyance. If this sounds familiar, it might be time to take a closer look at what's happening. Have you noticed his frustration rising over seemingly trivial matters? Maybe you're running late, and instead of brushing it off, he snaps at you. Or perhaps you make an innocent joke and he reacts with unwarranted sharpness. These moments might feel isolated, but when they start to pile up, they're a sign of something deeper. His emotions are shifting, and not in a good way. Let's break this down. When a man starts to lose love, he often becomes less patient and more critical. Why? Because the emotional connection that once fueled his affection is no longer there to cushion the bumps. Instead of seeing you through the lens of love, he starts focusing on flaws. It's not always a conscious decision, but the result is the same: tension, arguments, and an undercurrent of negativity. Let me ask you, have you found yourself walking on eggshells around him lately? Do you hesitate before bringing up certain topics, afraid of how he'll react? If so, you're not alone. The shift in his behavior can leave you feeling confused and emotionally drained, constantly wondering what you did wrong. Here's the truth. His irritation isn't necessarily about you. Often, it's a reflection of his own internal conflict. He might be feeling trapped, uncertain, or dissatisfied, but instead of addressing these feelings, he channels them into nitpicking or frustration. Unfortunately, you become the easiest target for his displaced emotions. But here's where it gets tricky. When faced with his irritation, your natural response might be to try harder to please him. You might bend over backward to avoid conflict, suppress your own needs, or apologize for things that aren't even your fault. While this might seem like the easiest path in the short term, it only feeds the imbalance in your relationship. Let me share a story with you. A woman I'll call Lily noticed her boyfriend becoming increasingly irritated over small things: her choice of music, the way she loaded the dishwasher, even the tone of her voice. At first, she tried to fix it by changing her behavior. She avoided playing her favorite songs, meticulously adjusted her household routines, and softened her tone during conversations. But no matter what she did, it wasn't enough. His irritation didn't fade, it grew. One day, Lily realized something important. His frustration wasn't about her actions. It was about his feelings. She stopped trying to change herself and instead started focusing on her own happiness. She calmly addressed the issue, saying, "I've noticed you've been getting upset over small things lately. Is there something deeper that's bothering you?" This shift in approach opened the door for a deeper conversation, though it also revealed an uncomfortable truth. He wasn't happy in the relationship anymore. Lily's story is a powerful reminder that his irritation isn't your burden to carry. If he's unwilling to take responsibility for his emotions or address the root cause of his frustration, you can't fix it for him. Love should feel like a partnership, not a one-sided effort to keep the peace. So what should you do if you're noticing this behavior? Start by taking a step back. Don't rush to defend yourself or smooth things over. Instead, observe his reactions and consider the bigger picture. Are his frustrations a recent development, or have they been building over time? Do they stem from specific stressors, or are they a consistent pattern? Once you've reflected on the situation, have an honest conversation with him. Use I statements to express your feelings without sounding accusatory. For example, say, "I've been feeling like small things are bothering you more lately, and it's been making me anxious. Can we talk about what's going on?" This approach invites dialogue rather than defensiveness. But here's the hard part. If he refuses to acknowledge the issue or blames you for everything, it's a sign that his irritation might be tied to a deeper disconnection. In Stoicism, one of the key lessons is understanding what you can control and accepting what you can't. You can't control his feelings or reactions, but you can control how you respond. You can choose to set boundaries, prioritize your own emotional well-being, and walk away if the relationship no longer aligns with your needs. Let's explore this concept further. Imagine you're in a relationship where his irritation has become a constant presence. Every conversation feels like a potential minefield, and you're constantly second-guessing yourself. This isn't just exhausting, it's unhealthy. You deserve a relationship where you can be yourself without fear of judgment or criticism. Let me ask you, how often have you compromised your happiness to avoid conflict? How many times have you silenced your voice hoping it would make things easier? These sacrifices might seem small in the moment, but over time, they erode your confidence and self-worth. The good news is that you have the power to break this cycle. Start by reconnecting with yourself. What brings you joy? What makes you feel confident and whole? When you prioritize your own happiness, you not only strengthen your sense of self, you also set a powerful example of how you deserve to be treated. In Stoic dating, this principle is key. Focus on what you bring to the table, not what you lack. A man who truly values you will recognize your worth and treat you accordingly. And if he doesn't, that's not a reflection of your value, it's a reflection of his readiness for love. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever dealt with a partner who seemed irritated by the smallest things? How did it affect your relationship, and what did you do about it? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective. And if this resonates with you, like this video and comment number 1 to let me know you're here. Before we wrap up, let me leave you with this. Love should feel like a source of comfort, not conflict. If his irritation has become a constant shadow in your relationship, it's time to take a step back and ask yourself, is this what I want? Is this what I deserve? The answer deep down is already within you. If you're finding these insights helpful, don't forget to subscribe. This channel is all about empowering you to navigate love and relationships with wisdom, confidence, and grace. By subscribing, you're joining a community of women who are committed to personal growth, authenticity, and self-love. So there you have it, the 5 undeniable things a man will often do when he starts falling out of love. These signs, though painful, are also powerful. They're not just clues about his feelings, they're opportunities for you to reclaim your strength, your clarity, and your direction. Let's take a moment to reflect. Has his tone and words shifted? Has he withdrawn emotionally, shown less effort, or created distance? Maybe he's become irritated over small things that never seemed to bother him before. Each of these changes may feel like a blow to your heart, but they also carry a profound message. Love shouldn't feel like this. It's not supposed to leave you questioning your worth or scrambling to fix something that takes 2 to build. Here's the truth. When someone pulls away, it's not always a reflection of you. Often it's about their own fears, doubts, or inability to meet you where you deserve to be. And that's okay, because it's not your job to carry the weight of the relationship alone. You deserve a love that's mutual, intentional, and full of effort. Let me ask you one last time. Are you seeing these signs in your relationship? If so, how do you feel? Are you ready to confront the truth and take back your power? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear your story, your wins, your struggles, and your wisdom. Before we wrap this up, here's your next step. If this video resonated with you, like it and comment number 1 to let me know you're here. Your voice matters, and your engagement helps create a space where more women can find the support they need. And don't forget to subscribe. This channel is here to guide you through the twists and turns of love and relationships with confidence, clarity, and even a touch of stoicism. Together, we're building a community of empowered women who are ready to embrace their worth and walk boldly toward the love they deserve. Finally, share this video with a friend who might need to hear these words today. You never know who's quietly struggling, waiting for someone to remind them of their strength. Thank you for being here, for your openness, and for trusting me with your time. Here's to your growth, your resilience, and the incredible love that's waiting for you on the other side of clarity. Until next time, take care and stay true to yourself. You've got this.